So why play? Why do we put so much emphasis into it? And what does it mean? And I want to talk about this not only from the perspective of early learning and childcare and group programs for young children that we've been talking about it, but I want to talk about it from all aspects of children's daily lives, at home, in programs, in parks, with neighbors. Why play? Why do we promote play? First of all, play is a vehicle to build relationships. We heard a lot about this morning and we heard about it yesterday, about the adult-child relationship and how we have this we look at the sheer joy, right? This mother may be exhausted, sleep-deprived, but she's having a moment. You can see it in her face. Okay, and clearly the baby's just delighted. This has got to be play. But it's also that mutual gazing, the connecting, the interbrain are locking, synapses are forming, etc., etc. And probably it's a moment of joy. You can imagine that there may be a game going back and forth of up and down or something like that. Peekaboo is another game that frequently we see it across cultures, some variation of that game, and really can engage. And the baby's playing back and forth. We can imagine that baby is engaging and encouraging the mother, so it's back and forth. Okay? So clearly play, and when I think it's the joy we get from babies through these play moments that have allowed the human species to survive a long infancy that requires a lot of care and a lot of resources from families. Managing excitement. All mammals play with each other for no particular reason, except that scientists think it helps manage excitement, that arousal and recovery that we heard about last night. That stress response of managing new things and recovering. It's not as clear as it could be. You can't see it because it's not a fabulous, crisp photo, but these kids all have smiles on their faces. Okay, it's rough and tumble play, and we sometimes get a little nervous about rough and tumble play because we're worried it's going to turn and become nasty, or we're worried kids are going to get hurt. All mammals do it. It seems to be required in order to understand boundaries and understand how to manage excitement and arousal. It seems to serve a fairly basic biological purpose. Okay? And there is some evidence that's come out of work actually in Quebec, it's what I'm most familiar with. Kids who do not have these experiences often are more likely to have difficulties with aggression as they become older preschoolers and enter in the school system. This seems to be a way to manage of what's okay to do and what's not okay to do. Now, and here, and faces give us lots of clues about whether it's over the top and needs some guidance, structure, talking, or whether they're having fun. But it does seem to serve a very important purpose, and the evidence suggests it's particularly important for boys. So managing excitement and managing that arousal and recovery, which I'm going to come back to. Problem solving. All kinds of play opportunities provide endless chances to solve problems. If play is really engaging young children, there's probably a problem to be solved embedded in the play. Here we have two children collaborating together. They're only about 3 years old. And they're collaborating together on a paper mache over a balloon. They're making into grand shapes and faces. And they have to work together to figure out how to get the paste, the newspaper, and everything on top of the balloon, which is slimy and it's all slipping off. And so they're figuring out, one of them's holding it, the other one's on top. And they are figuring, in this incident, this particular situation, they're figuring out how to do it. There's no adult holding it. There's no adult directing them on what they're doing. They're enjoying it, and they have figured out together how they have to hold it and mutually work together to do it. Sustained activity. Play often provides lots and lots of opportunities to stick with something, When we're really enjoying something and it's fun, we're more likely to stick with it. And that kind of attending and sticking with something is really important for a whole lot of various, both academic achievement, but pretty much everything in life. The ability to attend and stick to something, to see it through the tough stuff. Play isn't all easy. In fact, there need to be challenges in play, or else we get bored with it and it's no longer engages us. But to sustain, play can provide the opportunities. If we're challenged in the play, both if young children are challenged or we ourselves are challenged in our play, we're more likely to stick with it and make it a sustained activity. Play provides opportunities to discover quantitative relationships, and here a little girl is playing with a bunch of plastic insects of various kinds and making all kinds of, she spontaneously started, she's got a pretend game going about them, but she's also started to sort them. Here she's sorting them into teams where she's matching them up where they share common characteristics or patterns. And then she's moving into thinking about quantity, the numbers that are there. Okay, so it's actually both qualitative and quantitative relationships has emerged from her play thinking about these insects and what they're doing. A sense of narrative. One of the things that comes from make-believe or pretend or sociodramatic play is a sense of narrative, a story with a beginning, middle, and end. In pretend play, if children are on their own with pretend play, they have their own narrative, storyline that they keep going. And then when they join up with other kids, it becomes more complex because they have to have a joint attention to that, joint shared understanding, and take the sense of narrative forward. One of the things that research has told us about literacy is that this sense of narrative is particularly important in making the jump from learning to read to reading to learn. Carrie spoke about reading to learn yesterday and what an important step forward that is when kids are around grade 3. Okay? And a sense of narrative is particularly important. Yes, to learn to read, there are a number of other skills that are necessary, and some vocabulary, language skills, oral skills, phonetic awareness, whole letter word connections, etc., etc. Those are discrete skills or bottom up that are part of how we learn to read. But also, if we're starting to read to learn, to understand the context is the most important thing, a sense of narrative becomes particularly important. What's interesting is much of the research on early literacy ends when kids are about 6 or 7. Okay? It's not longitudinal, doesn't always carry forward. So we get the sense of these fast-track phonetic awareness or something like that. And when kids are 4 and 5 and they show these jump ups on learning to read, bump ups, when kids are 6 and 7, but not very many of them carry forward to the move to reading to learn. And when the ones that have done that, have carried forward, show that the sense of narrative is very important. And that's not the only reason. It's not even, I don't think, the main reason why pretend play is a good idea. I would argue those 2 kids, it's a good enough reason they're having fun right in the here and now that they're playing. But it is one of the, I think, carry forwards, maybe even byproducts of lots of dramatic play experience is acquiring that sense of narrative, which is important to reading to learn. Using tools and making plans. Here this child has used what's available in her environment. She was interested in the musical instruments, and she's made her own string instruments out of paper towel tubes and elastic bands and a Kleenex box and lots and lots and lots of masking tape have held this together. And here she wanted to do this. It's part of a play scenario she has going on, but the musical instruments kind of provoked her into making a stringed instrument, and she planned this out and put it together. There was some trial and error, but there was also some advanced planning. Representation. Play provides lots of opportunities for children to represent the world around them in their play. Okay? Here we have, this is a very urban representation. This actually see the tall towers here? These represent high-rise buildings, okay, with a circular driveway, and this one is under construction, and this represents the shape of a nearby playground. And this is the community. The school is in a community where this is the housing and playground, and these kids have put it together about as a map of their community. Okay? And this has come out of their play and probably provoked from discussion that was going on in the room. Inquiry. Quite often, play, exploratory play, that came, the whole notion of fooling around with things or exploring materials, identifies questions. Last night, Joan Durant talked about how children are scientists. They want to figure out how the world works. And that's absolutely true. And often by fooling around with things, by exploring with things, having the opportunity leads to questions, okay? Leads to different kinds of questions. And here we have some pumpkins. It's fall. There's lots of harvest with pumpkins. And the playing around, fooling around with the pumpkins has led to questions about the color orange. Is one thing, is what color are the pumpkins? Everybody agrees they're orange, but they're not all the same orange. So how does that happen? And how can we figure out that?